Tonight, Toronto homeowners can expect to pay hundreds more in property taxes this year.
It seems that Mayor Tory is completely disconnected from the lives of Torontonians.
The mayor presenting the city's budget today that includes a 5.5% property tax hike as the city faces a massive shortfall left in the wake of the pandemic. Plus,
there is such an increase of violence against people who are actively on the streets, and this is the most extreme example of that.
Police identify the man killed in last month's swarming attack downtown. His name added today to a homeless memorial for those who have died on the streets. And
trainings like this can help survivors like me.
Peel Police will be providing all officers with anti-human trafficking training, the specialized program created by survivors in an effort to help victims get rescued quicker. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. It's about to get more expensive to own a home in Toronto. Mayor Tory presenting the city's budget today, and it has homeowners facing a hefty increase when it comes to property taxes, 5.5%. This as the city tries to dig itself out of a massive budget shortfall that, as Ali Chiasson reports, it's hoping the two other levels of governments can help cover.
An economically healthy Toronto is important not just to Toronto, but it's important to the entire country.
The city's 2023 budget shows we've got a ways to go before we can say we are economically healthy, as evidenced by the $933 million crater they hope to fill with provincial and federal government money to help recover from the pandemic. It's also looking for $484 million to cover the 2022 shortfall. That's a $1.4 billion bailout. Councillor Diane Sachs doesn't love that.
The most pressing one is that without support from the federal and provincial governments, the city is on a path to serious deterioration.
In total, the city says it needs $1.5 billion of, quote, immediate funding from the other levels of government to avoid service impacts and further cuts.
Even in the assumption that we're going to get some kind of support from the federal and provincial governments, we're expecting the state of good repair of everything we depend on to deteriorate very significantly over the next decade.
So the city is feeling the pinch. You'll feel it in the property taxes. The city is hiking that by 5.5%. Plus the 1.5% city building levy. The total residential tax increases will cost the average Toronto household about $233 a year. On top of that, you may have to spend another $29 per year for the cost of water going up, and around $5 to $16 a year for waste management, not to mention your TTC fare going up by 10 cents.
I wish it could be lower, because I know that any increased cost right now is hard for people to bear.
For new City Councillor Jamal Myers, this draft of the budget seemed a little murky.
I knew the city had financial woes. What I wasn't really expecting was just sort of like the budgeting gimmicks. For example, the property tax increase is at 5.5%. Well, when you add in the building levy, it's 1.5%, which is 7%, which is 0.4% above the rate of inflation in Toronto, which is 6.6%. So I think we just have to be honest with people.
And being honest, does longtime councillor Gord Perks feel this will even be enough to maintain the level of service the residents expect?
No, I know the property tax number sounds big, but we have to remember that this comes after 12 consecutive budgets of refusing to address Toronto's structural deficit.
If the city needs it to get back on its feet and boom again, as I think we're going to do, then we have to make these investments.
The final iteration of the City of Toronto budget, after some debate and public consultation, will go to City Council for a vote on February 14th, Valentine's Day. City Council doesn't seem too sweet on the budget as is, so we'll have to see how it may change. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, Toronto has long had some of the lowest property tax rates in Ontario. Now, while some say now is not the right time for such a sizable hike, others are taking it in stride. Dale Manukduk has reaction tonight.
You may have thought Torontonians would be upset about a property tax hike. Well, these residents didn't get that memo.
Good for John.
I don't really agree with it.
but I think it's possible we have no choice.
Based on an assessed value of under $700,000, the combined property tax and building levy will cost the average home $233. The average selling price in Toronto last month topped $1 million. This East York home just sold for over $1.7, and its taxes would likely go up $600. The Utaguchi sold 100 properties last year.
Hello, welcome.
She says the hike won't deter buyers.
Let's say if we get a mortgage for the house around $1 million, the monthly payment is going to be around $4,000 to $5,000, and another $50. It's a very small increase comparing with a mortgage.
You'd think that with the price of everything going up, like gas, goods, and groceries, which are expected to cost families of four $1,000 more next year, that every penny would matter. But some believe Toronto's given residents a break for years.
They've always kept property taxes down in Toronto, and I think it's time to bring it up.
I think it's fun. I think Toronto has very low property tax, and we need the services.
Services like the TTC, among many others. But Jay Goldberg with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation isn't buying that argument, especially when it comes to seniors on fixed incomes.
If their home, which they bought for, say, $100,000, is now worth $1.5 million, even if percentage-wise, someone living in Brampton is paying a little bit more, real dollar-wise, that person in Toronto is paying more.
Goldberg says the mayor needs to do a little more homework.
Spending is up 43% in the last 5 years on the operational side. So there's definitely room for him to find efficiencies, and he shouldn't be turning to taxpayers like this.
Dale Manuktuk, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police have now identified the man killed in a swarming attack downtown last month. 59-year-old Ken Lee died a week before Christmas when a group of teenage girls allegedly swarmed and stabbed him. Today, his name was added to a memorial for homeless people who have died on the streets. Greg Ross has more.
This morning we're adding 15 names to the memorial.
There are people who have died while living on the streets of Toronto. Among the names added to this memorial outside of the Church of Holy Trinity was 59-year-old Ken Lee. Police say just after midnight on December 18th, Lee was near University and Front Street when 8 teenaged girls, ranging in age from 13 to 16, swarmed him, beating him and stabbing him. Lee later died in hospital.
It's just absolutely bizarre. Your loved one.
Diana Chan McNally is a harm reduction case manager with All Saints Toronto. She says she met Lee on a few occasions. She says violence against homeless people is getting worse.
There is such an increase of violence against people who are actively on the streets, and this is the most extreme example of that. I get people coming in with all kinds of injuries from being beat up by complete strangers. This isn't something that's new, it's ongoing.
It's getting worse and worse every day out here.
This woman says she's been living in a tent for nearly a year and a half. She says Lee's death has many who live on the street worried and feeling more unsafe than ever.
That's so evil. It's terrible. Like, people are struggling on the street enough. They don't need to have to go through something like that.
It has some calling on all 3 levels of government to take more action to protect the homeless.
It's a shocking situation, and we've got to take the lessons out of it, so that we prevent it from happening again.
Of the 8 girls accused of swarming and killing Ken Lee, 1 has been released on bail. The other 7 remain in custody and have bail hearings later this month. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Toronto police are warning the public about a number of thefts happening at a North York public school.
Between December 2021 and January 5th, 2023, police have received numerous reports for thefts that are occurring from Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace.
Police say the thefts of mainly small electronics have been happening outside Gulfstream Public School. People acting as buyers will meet sellers on school property, grab the item, and run. Police believe multiple suspects are involved. They are urging people to use caution when looking to sell or buy items online. Police advise people to meet in a busy public area with security cameras, ask the other person for ID before showing items, and to not go alone. All right, Kim McDonald from the Weather Network is joining us now with the first check on the forecast. And Kim, another overcast January day, kind of the theme so far this month.
Kelda, we've had it pretty easy so far this January. No big storms so far. Temperatures have been mild. However, it has been very gloomy. So much cloud cover. In fact, we haven't seen a mostly sunny day. Well, it depends on where you are, but in Toronto since December 21st, in Windsor since December 28th, and in London since December the 4th. Well over a month of just cloud cover and no real sunshine. Now, temperatures through the overnight still on the mild side. -3 in Toronto. Normal is -10. So it, again, not particularly cold in the overnight hours. To start the day, around -2 in Toronto, +1 in Windsor, -2 in Hamilton and London. And again, not a lot of breaks from the cloud cover. When we do get them, it seems to be late at night when we really can't enjoy it, unless, of course, you'd love to take a look at the stars. So the afternoon, not bad, a few flurries, but it's the long-range forecast. Thursday, we've got a system on the way.
Thanks so much, Kim. In an effort to protect more people from human trafficking, Peel Regional Police will now be providing every single officer with anti-human trafficking training. The specialized training created by survivors who say it will help police rescue victims faster. Meg Roberts has the details.
My name is Timia Nagy. I am a survivor of human trafficking. I'm also a CEO and founder of Timia's Cause and TC Online Institute.
24 years ago, Nagy was trafficked from Hungary to Canada. Within hours of arriving at Pearson Airport, she was taken to a motel and forced into sex slavery, escaping 3 months later.
Today is such a full circle moment.
Peel Regional Police have partnered with Tamia's organization to provide anti-human trafficking training to all 2,200 of its officers. It's calling the initiative the first in Canada.
Anybody that has a badge at Peel Police is going to get this training.
The training is victim-centered. 80% of the material was created by human trafficking survivors over the past 2 years. The training takes 4 hours to complete and can be done online. It includes best practices on how police can approach victims, what they should be looking for, and how they can keep themselves and victims safe.
Trainings like this can help survivors like me to shorten the time while we are trafficked and traumatized.
Peel Police say an officer can interact with a victim 3 times before detecting human trafficking. It could take even more attempts to get that person to safety.
It highlights the importance of doing things collaboratively. It also puts the community first and is also going to see our officers in a capacity that they will better serve the public.
The Ontario government says it would like to see what's being done in Peel rolled out through the province.
So the ability to influence, to make a difference, to literally change lives is happening with this announcement and the commitment from Peel Regional Police.
Ontario has the highest number of human trafficking cases in the country. Meg Roberts, CBC News, Toronto.
The University Health Network says things are just about back to normal after a major computer system outage. Now, UHN says the problems were caused by an internal outage and not a cyber attack. Officials add there was no breach of patient data. The outage began just before noon yesterday when most of the hospital network systems went down. By early afternoon, UHN declared a code gray, meaning a system failure. Now, all systems at UHN facilities are expected to be fully operational by the end of tonight. The Minister of Health was asked today about internal documents that show her ministry acknowledged months ago that Bill 124 was a challenge to retaining healthcare workers. That includes one nurse we spoke to who's already decided to leave the province. Lauren Redekop has more on the health minister's response.
Nicole Forster is a registered nurse in London, working in a rehab setting. She says the workload keeps increasing.
I love what I do and where I work and the clientele I work with. And it's everything else that makes it hard to keep doing what I love.
So she's leaving for Alberta, even though she only graduated less than 3 years ago. Part of the reason, the bill limiting her wage.
Bill 124 just adds insult to injury. We feel this increased need and responsibility, and then we just don't have anything to show.
Yesterday, we revealed internal government documents from a Freedom of Information request, part of the incoming health minister's transition binder. It recognized that one challenge for retaining staff is Bill 124. Today, Health Minister Sylvia Jones was asked about the documents, but didn't directly respond, speaking instead about a challenging time for healthcare workers.
It is, frankly, why we did things like making that commitment and giving an additional $5,000 to full-time RNs working in the province of Ontario.
However, that $5,000 bonus was announced months before she received these documents and under the previous health minister.
This investment will help us to retain the nurses that we already have.
It was likely already taken into account in the documents.
I know that it's going to demoralize more nurses when they see her, when they hear her response.
The opposition health critic says more needs to be done to keep nurses here.
Usually not a day goes by that I don't have a nurse calling. Usually they cry. They know that their patient needs them. They know that their coworkers need them, that they're going to be working short if they don't show, but they can't take this anymore.
Nicole Forrester says she's always wanted to move west, but has no job lined up, and says she's not alone in wanting to go.
It's a conversation daily on my unit that we all look at each other and say, why are we nurses? Why did we start this? Why are we still sitting here doing this after everything that's happened?
It's too late to keep her, but she hopes the government will do more for the nurses still here. Lorenda Redicomp, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. CBC Toronto has learned which companies got taxpayer money from Ontario's $100 million Tourism Recovery Fund. Now, among the biggest recipients, airlines, breweries, and movie theater chains. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the story.
It's a cold winter's day outside, but inside it's a tropical garden. The Cambridge Butterfly Conservatory is one of the most popular tourist attractions in this part of Ontario.
One just landed right over there.
Yes, so this is a zebra butterfly.
The conservatory welcomed tens of thousands of visitors annually before the pandemic, but like tourism facilities across Ontario, 2020's lockdowns hit this place hard.
Significant drop in revenue for us. Once the closures ended and we were able to reopen, it meant that we had to operate at reduced capacity, which again affected our revenues.
The Butterfly Conservatory applied for a provincial grant for tourism operators affected by the pandemic. It received $60,000.
It was very important for us to get that funding. It offset payroll costs because that's our biggest significant cost is keeping people employed. Without government funding, it would have been difficult for us to keep the same level of employment going.
By the time Ontario's tourism grants started flowing, it was more than 2 years after lockdowns began.
Earlier would have helped to avoid, certain loans that we had to take and pay back.
Grape Escape runs wine tours in Niagara. The company got $80,000 from the fund.
Earlier would have been nice, and obviously a little bit more money would have been nice too.
Despite the delays, tourism operators generally welcomed the funding.
Actual monies that people could put towards paying salaries, reopening costs and operational costs. And so there was a lot of positive feedback from our members for the program itself.
The biggest grants were nearly $700,000 each. That's how much went to airlines, including Air Canada, WestJet, and Porter. Other companies that received the maximum, the Cineplex chain of movie theaters, Amsterdam Breweries in Toronto, and Andrew Peller Limited, which owns one of Ontario's biggest wineries. A spokesperson for the tourism minister said businesses that offered visitor experiences, tours, information sessions, and demonstrations were eligible.
Because this is a place where you can escape, you can get away from it all.
That desire for escape is what the tourism industry is counting on for its future. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Cambridge.
And you are looking at a live shot of the Toronto skyline, partly cloudy tonight and staying that way overnight. Currently, it is sitting at the freezing mark downtown. Let's go back to Kim now for a look at your extended forecast. And Kim, some active weather is on the way.
Kelda, pretty calm for the first part of the week, but by Thursday, things are changing. So we've been seeing these stories, of course, with all of the rain in California. That is starting to move across the country. This low pressure system moves into the Great Lakes on Thursday, making its way out for Friday. We'll finally see some sunshine behind that on Saturday, but before we get there, there's a lot to talk about. So two big ridges of high pressure, one to the west, one to the east. There's our low. If it can squeeze in between these, this will be mainly a rain event. But if it doesn't, temperatures will remain on the cool side, and for some, this is going to be a lot of snow. So everybody's really paying attention to that freezing line. There's a warm front moving in. Temperatures are expected to be just above the freezing mark for the GTA, but then fall. Now, if they fall early, that rain changes over to snow, and we're talking about decent accumulation. So this is a bit of a nail biter. For some, this is going to be straight snow. Collingwood, for example, Barrie, this is going to be a lot of snow. So not Wednesday, here's Thursday. The snow in blue. In green, that's the rain, and we can see everybody changes over to blue eventually. So the temperatures will drop, and we'll see that rain shift over to snow late day Thursday into Friday. First part of the day, not so bad. Here's Wednesday, some light flurries to our north. There's the rain showers. They really get intense, though. That rain can really start to fall a lot more hard by the commute on Thursday. So I'm thinking, despite the fact that we may just see rain at that point in time, it's going to be a slow go on Thursday afternoon. Here's another look at where we expect the rain again along the shores of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. That's where the heavier rain will be. The farther north you go, the more likely you are to see snow with this. And again, this is going to be significant snow for some. We're also going to see some gusty winds with this storm too.
Thanks so much. Finally tonight, this next story is for book lovers everywhere. A ship carrying thousands of stories has just docked in Egypt. Logos Hope, the largest floating international book fair, recently pulled into Port Said. Now, its mission is to promote knowledge and diversity. Volunteer crew members from dozens of nations wear traditional costumes of their home country and welcome visitors aboard for a cultural exchange. The ship offers a selection of about 5,000 different titles in a vast array of subjects, both in Arabic and English. It's operated by a nonprofit organization in Germany, and there are also two sister ships that have taken similar missions. In total, the vessels have visited over 150 countries since 1970. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Maribel Tarouk has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone.